The central banks, of course, will be playing that prominent role. When it comes to the question of the Fed, Bill Dudley, Mohamed El-Erian last week saying they should cut this month. Would that smack of panic? That is not the baseline. That is not the base case for these markets right now. But would that be a move of panic from the Fed?
Good morning, Tom. Yes, I think a cut this week would alarm markets. I do not expect them to cut. While they're trying to step away from forward guidance, they're not yet in a world where they want policy to seemingly be completely random and shocking. And the fact is, we're pricing on a very, very small probability of a cut this week. So I think if the Fed suddenly did that, it would worry people about what do they know that people don't know. And also, I don't feel that the economic evidence justifies a cut quite yet. In hindsight, a couple of months from now, we might say, oh, yes, it was clear. But the indicators are pretty mixed. Yes, there's still a disinflationary trend, but we know we're through some of the best of the base effects, and that the second half of this year will be a bit harder on the inflation front. And while there are cracks in the labour market, a lot of economic indicators are not showing an economy that is that close to a recession. Even Claudia Sahm herself, who created the so-called Sahm rule, said it does not look like a recession is imminent in the US, and therefore I don't think the Fed cuts, and I think this week we'll probably see US yields move higher in the front end.
So whereas a cut may be, if not immediately, at least on the horizon for the Federal Reserve and arguably the BOE, Mark, the BOJ going in the exact opposite direction. Consensus actually expecting a hike coming on Wednesday. How does this catch markets off guard, if at all?
Yeah. I think the BOJ will confuse and disappoint. It's what the BOJ tends to do, confuse and disappoint. At the moment, going to this meeting, there are very hawkish expectations priced, and the shorts, the weak-handed shorts at least, have been cleaned out of this trade. The economics just don't justify a very hawkish message, given that the economy is practically stagnant, evenly with deeply negative real yields this year. And inflation, sure, it's just above target, but is it sustainable? That is very much debatable. So I think if the BOJ hikes, it'll come with a dovish message which undermines it, or else they may not hike at all. And I think ultimately after the meeting, we'll see the yen start weakening again, because long-term fundamentals are still very much against it, at least on the crosses, even if the dollar is a different trade.
Mark, just briefly on the MPC, do the hawks fold their hand when it comes to this week's decision?
I'm biased to think that the BOE doesn't cut. But I have to say, this is a coin toss. There's not really any edge here. This is not one where, if I was still trading seat, that I'd want a position for that. And I'm also worried about the fact that the speculative market is long sterling at the moment. So therefore, if they do cut, even though it's slightly better than Even's pricing of a cut, it'll really deliver an impact in the currency market as well. So look, BOE is a coin toss. What's interesting, though, is a tail risk. We want to look for a guide in that. The Australian CPI print out the day before might influence what the BOE does, because it'll indicate on the global disinflationary trend.